So, without further ado, Scott is going to tell us about Blade.
Yes, Blade. Take a trip back in time with us to 1998, a strange and confusing time where films based on Marvel Comics were not the all-consuming media behemoths they are today, but a force entirely absent from cinemas since 1986's disastrous Howard the Duck. Well, barring perhaps a few highly limited releases of some straight-to-video dreck like the Dolph Lundgren version of The Punisher.
I always forget that Howard the Duck was a Marvel thing.
Yes.
I'm only ever vaguely aware of the film at all. Fortunately, I have never seen that because yes. I'm not down with bestiality, which is what I believe that film's largely about.
It's more of a subcurrent to it. I don't think it's explicitly about that. Yes, but I'm sure that the success of the Batman films throughout the 90s started to pique interest in Marvel properties, but even Batman had cratered a year before with Batman and Robin, the nadir's nadir of adaptations. So it was a brave move, perhaps, for New Line to put money into another comic book adaptation. However, I suppose with Blade not being the obvious choice from Marvel's buffet of characters, I'd certainly never heard of him outside of the film franchise, and haven't really, even now. I've never seen a Blade comic in my life. And vampires were still, at the time, the pop culture monster of choice, from the likes of Buffy and From Dusk Till Dawn, so perhaps it's not quite as risky a bet as it first seemed.
Yeah, so before you go on, I was just thinking, you mentioned the vampire thing, like Interview with the Vampires, like 1994 or something, isn't it? So it's, there is a whole slate of them from the all through the 90s, I guess, really, if you include Buffy.
Yeah, they perhaps didn't have quite the same sort of dominance that zombies have had of late, and did back in the 70s, I suppose. Yeah. But they were the. I think they were the mythological monster of the era. Yes. Financially, at least, Blade paid off for New Line, so while perhaps the subsequent appearance of Fox's X-Men and Spider-Man deservedly get the credit for Marvel cinema revival, or, well, Vival, as they weren't exactly a force before then, it's really Blade that's the starting point for it all. But enough of the scene setting. What is Anne Blade, and what it to do, I hear you ask? Well, fear not, my grammatically challenged chum. Let your old pals fill you in. Wesley Snipes, of course, dons the sunglasses and leather trench coat of the titular day-walking, half-human, half-vampire vampire hunter. He has all the strengths of a vampire. Speed, strength, cool tattoos, nice teeth, but with none of their weaknesses. Sunlight, garlic, silver, apart from the thirst for blood. This is controlled by a serum that his grizzled vampire hunting buddy Chris Christopherson's Whistler produces, although we're told that he's building up a resistance to it, a Chekhov gun that the franchise never quite gets round to triggering. Vampires live all around us, but keep themselves to the shadows, the ruling families keeping a truce of sorts with the human power brokers, much to Blade's distaste. However, young upstart Deacon Frost, played, unfortunately for us, by Stephen Dorff, makes a move to bring unbalance to the force, decreeing that vampires should openly take their place at the top of the food chain. His plan for this is to fulfill a prophecy from the Vampire Bible, which I think was called the Book of Eli, which we'll see.
Scott,
there's a deep cut reference.
Scott, you're a terrible person you are to bring that film up.
Someone's got to like it. Yes, so this will see the unleashing of the Blood God in an unsuspecting world. For this, he'll need the Daywalker's blood, to which Blade is less than agreeable, hence all of this conflict and unpleasantness. Now, I don't think a lot more detail of the plot is needed. It's very much not the film's strong suit, other than to perhaps mention Nabush Wright's hematologist Karen Jensen, who's saved early on from being turned into a vampire, and who goes on to give us an exposition sounding board, and yet, somehow, even with this minimal involvement in the plot, a bigger role than most women in action cinema of the era. It's a low bar. Now, Blade wasn't warmly embraced by critics at the time, and I suppose I can see why. There's a number of things that could use a rethink. While this is a top-tier Stephen Dorff performance, that essentially means serviceable, so there's room for some improvement there. More critically, while we're a few years and a number of millions of dollars away from the Matrix's redefinitions at the point, the standard for CG in film was significantly higher than Blade was able to muster. Now, some of it's just conventionally dated, such as that section around the kind of subway train fight, but the effects work in the final battle is ropier than a rope shop stockroom, and given that it was, I believe, a reshoot from a poorly received, entirely different CG set piece, I'm sure everyone did the best they could with the time and the money available to them. Unfortunately, it is not great. That's a sour note to end on. Because, well, the rest is spiffing. plaudits, of course, go to Snipes, who expertly traverses the very thin tightrope, indeed, of a cool, over-the-top, slightly camp badass, over which a giant abyss of extreme ridiculousness awaits. And if you look closely down there, you can just see Vin Diesel's Riddick waving back up at you. Just as key to the piece as Christopherson's grizzled veteran, and the rapport the two slide into very early on sells their backstory unusually well for this sort of thing. Pleasingly, he gets as many cutting and funny lines as Snipe does, and it's a joy to watch them bounce off each other. One thing we perhaps didn't cover all that much in the Snipes episode is his action credentials, particularly the more martial arts side of things. Well, he is one crisp Mother Hubbard, particularly with those high kicks that I think he does better than anyone else in Western cinema. His physicality and poise sells some, let's be honest, silly action and makes it very fun to watch. Kudos, I suppose, then, to director Stephen Norrington and or his fight choreographers for delivering on a crucial plank of the film. I suppose we should mention in passing, given what I've been saying in the intro to this, that the year before this, in 1997, New Line also released Spawn, another comic book adaptation which does have certain similar grimdarkian aesthetics to it, but it is, however, a joyless dumpster fire of a film, so let's just all go back to pretending that it didn't exist for the good of our health. Yes, so I'm gratified to find that time hasn't really diminished my enjoyment of Blade, and I still find it to be top-tier action entertainment, albeit one that's bettered by the sequel. Yes, the CG work does let it down quite badly, but you can probably give it a pass for that just because it's so much fun and the rest of it, and Snipes' charisma goes an awfully long way to patching up a lot of those holes. There's some really nice little interplay between him and Christopherson, as I say. I think one of the first signs you see of it is where he gives him the that ultraviolet lamp that he's been working on, and he says it's still heavy. It's like, but you're so big. There's lots of nice little banter interplay that makes you kind of buy that these people have been together for as long as they've been saying they have 30 years in it. So that all really sells it quite well. So yes, still enjoyed it. Certainly not perfect. As I say, CG is a huge letdown, but most of the rest of it and most of the other action scenes are kind of practical enough that they kind of can just about get away with it, I think.
Yeah. Before we're going to talk about this, I hate you for mentioning that film you did mention, which I'm not going to do again, but you mentioned Spawn, which I have in fact never seen, and for basically the entire time that I'm been aware of his existence, I have confused it in my head with Steel, with Shaq, which I've also not seen, but anytime people mention Spawn, it's that Shaq film, isn't it? And it's not, yes. But it may as well be.
It's the one where Shaq's a genie, right?
That's the new Aladdin film, no?
Yes.
There'd have been a bit of casting.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm largely on board with what you're saying there, Scott. I find that this is perhaps even more enjoyable than I remember finding out. I remember finding that there was more of a gulf between the second and first film. And this watch, I thought they were much closer together. Yeah.
I think, spoilers perhaps, but I think the second one does sort of edge it out. But I've always thought that Blade is really only marred by the sort of CG catastrophes at the end of it. The rest of it I really like.
And I don't even mind Stephen Dorff so much in this. Thinking back, there aren't all that many Stephen Dorff films I've seen.
No.
And this, he's not great, but he's not awful either. He does the job. And it's just, it's fun. Wesley Snipes is kind of camping it, kind of cheesy, and sometimes, and I'm not sure if it's him or the direction, kind of goes down a bit too hard on the whole gruff badass thing. It's like it's just a bit too far, but there, like the moments you mentioned between him and the Whistler, there's so much else to balance it out.
Yeah,
that it's not that much issue. He's thoroughly entertaining throughout.
Yeah,
and it's just a really entertaining action film, and it's an R-rated, violent, bloody comic book movie. Well before Deadpool tried to claim that it was the one that did that.
Yeah.
Screw you, Deadpool, and Ryan Reynolds. Though we'll come to that. Sorry, so I had to put a spoiler alert in there too. The problems are partly with the CGI. Now, I have seen now and then people say things like, "Oh, the CGI aged really badly." No,
it was awful at the time. Yeah,
exactly. It was awful at the time. But I didn't watch Blade in 1998 and go, "Wow,
that's convincing." Yes.
See how those vampires apparently have cartoon skeletons inside of them.
Yes.
Oh, I'm totally buying that.
That's probably what happened, yes.
But there's some of the effects towards the start that aren't so bad. There's when the vampires just sort of get turned to kind of glowing embers and stuff.
Yeah,
that kind of works
good,
pretty
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
When they try to make them more just like a step in between of just becoming a skeleton, it's like, yeah, you look like you're made of clay.
Yeah.
Or a cartoon.
It's all about Harryhausen at that point, right?
Yeah, it's a bit. The effects were always terrible, so that kind of makes that easier to rewatch because I already knew they were terrible. You know, it wasn't like I'm going to go back. Oh no, these I don't remember these looking like that. No,
you're prepared for it. Yeah,
I remembered. It's quite pleasant too. It's a superhero film that isn't an origin story.
Yeah.
I mean, you do get some bits of backstory because you have to, because otherwise, who would you know? You wouldn't know who this guy was. But it's not, oh, here's how he came to be and showing him fighting his way up and becoming the person. No, it's like, he's Blade.
Yeah.
Excellent. I like that because, and again, this predates all of those that terrible trend of having to have an origin story for everything. Mm-hmm. And in the case of Spider-Man, 7 or 8 of them within a decade, I think.
Yes.
I like the editing too. You mentioned Wesley Snipes' martial arts skills, which I mentioned in our last episode, although the films we covered didn't have much opportunity for him to show off. He's like a 5th degree black belt in karate. He's done capoeira and Brazilian jiu-jitsu and a bunch of other stuff. And clearly he can pull that off.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, he's maybe not quite a JCVD, but he's probably not far off of it, in sort of the fluidity.
Yeah.
He doesn't have anything quite as impressive as JCVD's trademark jumping roundhouse kick or anything like that, but
yeah. Although I don't know what that I don't know what you'd call it. In WWF days, it was a shuffle sidekick, the kind of super kick thing he does. That's really crisp. I like that. That's as much of a trademark as he did. I just would like to see him super kick more people through windows. That'd be good.
Well, you can say that about almost any film, Scott.
Most films are improved by someone getting super kicked out of the window. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one fault with Citizen Kane.
Yeah, that no one suplexed through a table either. It's terrible.
I don't know. It's the ridiculous praise that's heaped on that film. People just don't know what we're talking about.
Number of super kicks, 0. No stars.
Yeah, so it's the editing allows them to actually show that. It's not just like hugely, massively chopped up and like closely cropped either.
Yeah.
There's enough editing to keep a good rhythm to stop it feeling too static, but there are enough wide shots in there to allow you to actually see the action, the choreography that's happening, and Snipes' skill and skill of the people he's fighting too in some cases. Yeah. So I mean, it's all pretty good. Again, the big downside is the dodgy CGI. As I've said, it was always dodgy.
Yeah,
it's not such a problem. The only thing I like minor niggles. What I did notice is it's something I've actually become more sensitive to. Maybe even in just the last year, and why I'm not sure, but I'm kind of getting fed up of over the top Foley work. I just find it artless now, whereas it didn't used to bother me. So maybe as I'm thinking about it more, it's perhaps it. And I mean, there's sort of the cliched ones of, for some reason, every film when you turn lights on, they make a big clunking sound because that's exactly how lights sound.
Yeah.
But it's not that stuff. It's more just unnecessary Foley. An example recently is the Audi that Robert Downey Jr. is driving in Avengers Endgame, which has big roaring noises and but it's an electric car. And even if you didn't know that, there was a massive advert before the film started for that particular electric car. What's quite nice about electric cars is they don't make an awful lot of noise, but it's like, oh no, people expect a car to make a roaring noise. We'll have to put that in. So
yeah,
I'm becoming more sensitive to that of late. All of which is leading up to the fact that there's a wee bit of that here, not as bad as some films, but it's just not every movement everybody makes every time has to make sound. And in this film, it seems to be suggesting somehow that the vampire's teeth make noises. Which just seems a strange thing to me.
Yeah.
and this is really the most minor thing. It's just, this is the first opportunity I've really had to sort of express it, because I forgot to do it during our Avengers talk. So. And a weird incesty moment with his mother.
Yeah.
That's kind of creepy. Why is that in there? And fortunately brief, but odd.
Yeah. I don't know, it kind of gets away with that, because I think it's trying to sell the kind of otherworldliness of vampires, you know, about how are human. I can see what they were going for, but I mean, it is obviously creepy, but that's sort of the point of the scene, I suppose. That's kind of why it was written in there, I would guess, to try and give you a kind of weirded out moment. Now, you can argue it doesn't really belong in there. I'd be open to accepting those arguments, but I can kind of see what it's going for. It does kind of work, but yeah, it's a bit squeamish in a film that is not otherwise geared up to deliver that moment to you. Yes,
it's we've already mentioned one creepy Leah Thompson film. It's not quite as bad as, for instance, Back to the Future.
Yeah.
In which she doesn't get it on with a duck, I believe. It's not any cut I've ever seen of Back to the Future. But it's not quite as squeamish as that, at least almost is. But yeah, it's just it's a bit odd. And I wonder why it's in there. Is that like, it feels like maybe it was done by the actors, or maybe they forgot what the relationship was while they were shooting that scene. It's like, oh, I'm a vampire and he's my victim, I'm going to kind of do this. And like, forgetting that, oh wait, no, I'm a vampire, but I'm also his mother. So I wonder if that's kind of got lost somewhere in the shuffle of like forgetting what they were doing. So this is the most specific to me thing you can possibly imagine, Scott. But the only other issue I have with this is that the person that Tracy Lords takes to the bloodbath rave.
Oh, like the goon at the start, yeah.
Who looks pretty much exactly like a young Dennis Quaid.
Yes.
He doesn't die, which I find deeply dissatisfying for reasons I've discussed many times. So that you're not going to get a more me reference than that, I think.
Yes.
Otherwise, a thoroughly entertaining film.
Yes.
It stands up pretty well.
Yeah, I think it does. I think what stands out, on this rewatch is that I cannot imagine anyone other than Wesley Snipes being in this role.
No.
Apparently, he had been trying to get a Black Panther film off the ground in this time.
I can see him in that role as well, actually.
Yeah, so that would work, and this would be the one that he was actually able to get to, and perhaps not quite a second choice, but again, he just seems to be. He seems like someone who really wants to do this role and do it have the most fun he can with it and make it the best film that he can, which is something that we've perhaps discussed in a few Marvel films where some actors are perhaps not quite so engaged with the material. But I think his love for the character that he's doing really reflects in his performance, and that really does help make it a more enjoyable experience for something that is, let's be honest, it is a very silly film, but it's a really silly and enjoyable film, and it's enjoyable because everyone kind of knows what they're getting into, and it's made with love, and that really shows through, and it's delivered a really good action film.
He'd apparently wanted, I think, quoted in 2014, I think, as like wanted to revisit Blade, and I can kind of see that working because Logan worked so well, but at the same point, it's hard to not think that if they went to visit the aging Blade now, it would basically just be Logan.
Yeah.
Because they're like very similar sort of abilities too, and doing kind of similar things.
Yes.
The healing and the regeneration and all that stuff. I'm like,
yeah, the ship may have sailed. Yeah,
it's a pity because there's something interesting to explore there, but that's well ahead of us.
Yes.